So this is gonna be one of the more interesting videos that I'm gonna be making. Hello everyone. In case you're unaware, I am MacAndSwiss, self-declared most Asian brownie on the internet, and a Roblox game developer. Now, this video in particular has been blowing up in the community since it dropped, I believe, today. And I've decided to check it out myself, record a reaction as a Roblox game developer, but as someone who really isn't that, I guess, high up in the hierarchy. I don't really have any, I don't have any games actually out necessarily that are built as non-meme products. I have a current part-time job as a Roblox game developer. I won't disclose publicly how much I make every month, but suffice it to say, it is substantial for me personally. I've never held a job before beyond this one, but yeah. I also do some other things outside also for the platform, things like organizing events, as well as doing quality assurance testing for certain games, which may be public or under a non-disclosure agreement. So I do have some connections to people who are within the company. But that being said, I have no contractual obligation to say anything positive, and I probably won't say a lot of positive things. Now, in terms of what I've heard about this video, I've heard pretty conflicting things about it. I've heard that it has some pretty exaggerated comparisons to certain labor practices in the past, but I don't know much beyond that. I've heard good things about it, I've heard bad things about it, but I personally have not seen it, so I decided to jump in and record my reaction and sort of offer a little bit of my own insight as someone who is very much connected to the platform, but not a very substantial or notable person within the platform itself. So someone who is still sort of trying to find their way towards that golden, the holy grail of success, if you will. So without further ado, let's jump into it.
When I learned 3 stunning things about Roblox. If you don't know much about Roblox, today it is the most popular video game in the US and Europe.
Okay, so starting off, this is a little bit of a nitpick, but Roblox is not a game per se, and this is definitely a little bit more nitpicky, but the way that I understand it and the way that I interpret it, Roblox is a platform to host games, or as they've been pivoting to recently, experiences. And they're trying to expand into this whole idea of the metaverse, and you may have heard that from other companies, sort of being the end-all be-all destination for all things, not just games, but also concerts, and maybe office meetings in the future. I know that they're rolling out some pretty cool features with sort of facial expressions and like voice chat and things like that. But that's besides the point. What they've said about it being very popular in North America and Europe is very much true.
Played by 200 million, mostly young people every month. Roblox is more of a creative platform than a game, though. It's a downloadable portal
I swear I did not pre-watch this.
to a staggering quantity of multiplayer games of all different genres that are all just a little bit floaty and janky. That's because anybody can download Roblox and use its free tools and free hosting to start making and monetizing games. And an astonishing number of people have done just that. Where today Steam hosts almost 55,000 games, Roblox hosts more than 20 million experiences, which is what Roblox calls games because, legally speaking, it can't admit to selling games within Apple's App Store, as that would make it a game shop within a game shop. So, those 3 things I learned that made me do the internet equivalent of a double take. 1, all of Roblox's developers do earn a cut of the revenue of everything they create, but that cut is shockingly small. To put it in perspective, Steam catches heat from game developers for taking 30% of every sale, while Epic and Microsoft's PC store take just 12%. Roblox claims that developers receive around 24.5% of any sale, although as we'll soon see, in reality they get even less.
And some people, and particularly developers, have claimed that in terms of the reason why they do so, and Roblox themselves, the big thing is that they're hosting the multiplayer servers. They're doing a lot of the back-end work, data storage and things like that, stuff like that, that the developers still need to put in some work to manage. But of course, a lot of the back-end sort of getting multiplayer to work in a very precise way, getting data storage to work properly, although losses still do happen, that's sort of where most of that is coming from, that's where most of it is going. I would argue that in a very similar vein, that Steam and Epic have a less hands-on approach in terms of managing games which are on their platforms. I imagine it as, and I personally don't have any experience publishing to either of these other stores beyond Roblox, that you post a game on there and sort of that's where the relationship between you and the game publisher and the platform sort of ends in terms of their involvement. They are the place where you put up your game, and if people decide to buy it, good. If they don't, well, that's not their problem. Of course, I know that Steam also has some other things like the Steam Workshop to host game mods and things like that. They also have the forums as well as the store, which does also do a lot of things. And there may be an argument that Roblox does take quite a bit of that cut, and I personally would like to see that percentage that they take go down and more of it going to developers. But at the same time, I do understand from what I know right now that Roblox is losing money. They are running at a net loss, and it's kind of strange that they're running at a net loss at this point. But I would probably prefer to see them become profitable somehow before worrying too much about that. It's a little bit of a sort of tricky situation. It's a double-edged sword. If you advocate for more percentage going to developers, that does mean that, well, that's less money and going into their pockets, and potentially that might spell an end for Roblox eventually down the line. I'm not really sure which route I would rather take. And from a personal perspective, it seems all right now, and there are complaints, and very much so, very justified complaints from developers on the platforms that have heard about the developers' exchange rates, which I assume that this person will go into eventually. But it's not as big of an issue, and perhaps it may become a big issue after this video. Who knows? Maybe they'll end up doing something. I'm not too sure.
The second thing I saw? When Roblox went public on the stock market this year, it was valued at a staggering $41 billion, a value somewhere between Nintendo and Electronic Arts. Roblox is now worth 7 Ubisofts, and 3, in the words of Roblox's own Vice President of Marketing, Tammy Barmek. From the very beginning, it was about having kids develop games for other kids. These kids are not just hobbyists, they're doing real work that is driving the value of one of the biggest video game publishers in history. But with a cut that's just 1/3 of the industry standard and nobody looking out for their health, we had to ask, is the next generation of video game developers being exploited before they've even finished secondary school? But before we look at how Roblox treats its workers, first we have to look at how Roblox turns its young users into workers in the first place. So, the good thing about Roblox, as I've said, is that the tools are free, the hosting's free. The tools actually let you skip with the traditional learning curve associated with 3D modeling.
And this is a pretty big part, and I'll offer a little bit of insight into the union system. It's not perfect by any means, and actually, when it first came out in the version 1, it was actually very, very rough. It was performance-wise, it was very much worse than Blender in terms of the triangle count and things like that. Now it's much better, and I think that it's something that a lot of developers would use in place of Blender, and I've personally used it myself, just because it does pretty much what I assume like most people would need Blender for in terms of just creating sort of more complex shapes. Obviously, there's a lot of things that Blender does that Roblox cannot do in terms of it being, well, a fully fledged 3D modeling software. But unions are pretty nice, both on Roblox and both in terms of labor.
And Roblox even handles moderation of your players for you. But people just using these free tools to get creative doesn't make Roblox any money. In fact, it loses the money because servers are expensive, which is why the moment that Roblox's core player base of 9 to 15-year-olds start playing, they are submerged in this idea that they could be an entrepreneur. After all, it's impossible to play Roblox without making other Roblox users richer because you're buying passes for their experiences. You're buying their cosmetics. But we're just getting started. The tabs at the top of Roblox.com are basically find games, find cosmetics, and start making stuff yourself. But if kids click on that, they see make anything, reach millions of players, and earn serious cash. Creators like you, it says, are being paid for what they love to do. If you go to Roblox's YouTube channel, the first videos you see are about successful game developers. In general, Roblox's PR department loves shining a light on the game's younger success stories. The official...
And I'm gonna play devil's advocate, and I'm probably gonna do that a lot actually throughout this video, but I think when it comes to labor in general nowadays and sort of the world that we live in, there is a fetishization, if you will, of younger business leaders, entrepreneurs, you can call them, really anything, right? You'll hear stories about the 14-year-old going to MIT, the 16-year-old forming their own startup, and of course the teenagers building out Roblox games and making serious cash. And in the cases where the news stories do get published, they do make decent money.
Roblox tutorials and the game's support website both assume you want help with monetization, and if you go to education.roblox.com, which contains lesson plans for educators, one of the lessons is how to earn money in Roblox. Or, in the words of one 11-year-old I interviewed,
I saw other big games, I saw other developers getting money in a way that looked easy.
so are any of these kids really earning serious cash? Well, where the average indie game on Steam makes several $1,000s, the vast majority of experiences on Roblox earn their creators $0. Now, to understand why that is, we need to take a closer look at the Roblox marketplace, because it took me weeks to get my head around this. I'll let you decide for yourself what chance you think kids have of understanding it. So, making a game in Roblox is easy. It's when you want other people to play it to reach those millions of players that Roblox promised that your journey will start heading uphill.
Yep.
If you want to figure out what to play on Roblox, it only shows you the 1,000 or so games out of its 20 million that have the most players right now.
And the main criticism that I've heard about this video from this particular point is that Roblox is actively working on this, and at the top, I believe now for search, or on the Discover page, you'll see recommended for you, which is an algorithmically based recommendation thing, I assume, and most of these games have, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but low thousands of players versus you might be able to see on the screen like Pet Simulator 125,000, Anime Fighter Simulator 87,000. Like those are huge games, but for the recommended for you search, or the sort, those games are typically smaller in player count, and that's sort of where most of the organic growth on Roblox comes from. And I say organic growth because for my personal experience and from what I know, a lot of the growth for Roblox games, especially if you're just starting out, comes from external sources, and maybe they'll touch on that later.
There are no discoverability tools that let you see the newest games or to help new designers. The up and coming section still shows you games with thousands of players.
That is true, and you'll see that there are some interesting games like Pet Simulator X. There is, again, 127,000 players on the up and coming. Granted, Pet Simulator X is actually a relatively new game, so that might be one of the reasons why it's up there, is because it's relatively new and it has a lot of players, though the algorithm could use some tweaking.
So if you're a kid trying to make games for Roblox, you have two choices at this point. You can hustle and try and get your game in front of streamers or YouTubers, or you can pay Roblox to advertise it. But to buy anything in Roblox, you first have to convert your real money to the company's virtual currency, Robux. Developers on Roblox bid with Robux for ad slots in an auction, a system that is discussed by developers in forum threads as a gamble, with developers hoping that with the right game and the right ad, they'll grab enough players that their game ends up surfacing in the churning froth of the Roblox marketplace. So the first thing Roblox tells us young developers is make anything, reach millions of players, earn serious cash. And then the next thing it says is, oh, well, I mean, if you actually want people to play your game, I guess you could give us money. But as duplicitous as it sounds, we know this works because Roblox has 20 million experiences made by its mostly young audience, even though when I spoke to professional Roblox developers, they told me that kids should not expect to make money on the platform.
Yeah, I don't think it's really possible for young developers to succeed on the platform anymore. It's really hard to get into those top 200 games.
Sometimes I think of making Roblox games as trying to make a viral TikTok or a viral meme. It's really tricky. There's pretty much only one big market to shoot for on Roblox right now, and that's kids. If you don't hit that demographic just right, and if you don't get your gameplay loop just right, you fail.
Later in the
And what that person said, it is unfortunately true. There's not a lot of market. There's not a very big market for games that you would associate would have players of a more mature audience. So games like first-person shooters actually do fairly well, but games like MMORPGs, they can be hit or miss. And strategy games are just completely they're almost non-existent. Most of them start as sort of intern projects through something called Roblox Accelerator, which is where Roblox pays you to basically build a game over the course of a season. So most of them start there, and they get some attention, especially from developers who think that, well, obviously there's not a lot of strategy games on the platform because, well, no one's building them and no one's playing them, with a couple of exceptions. So most of them die there as well. So it's very much a market that's targeted towards kids, and that's sort of the demographic you have to hit, and it is relatively gambly. And there are games that could have success in other places that target a more mature audience that just don't do well here. Granted, there are a couple of examples. There is one called Risky Strats, which has gathered a cult following. But again, I think with a lot of these more mature, more sophisticated games, if you will, not to say that some of these other games are not, but the real-time strategy games and things like that really rely on a loyal following rather than mass appeal. And when you're relying on a loyal following, it can be very hard to sort of get started, especially when Roblox, especially their algorithm, rewards player count more than dedicated followers.
In this video, we're going to get to why it benefits Roblox Corporation to have hundreds of thousands of developers making games for the platform ignorant of the fact.
I'm going to call it right now. They're probably going to say like it just widens the sort of the pool of Robux that's floating around, and the less Robux that each individual developer earns, the less money they pay out to developers through developer exchange, which is the program where you exchange Robux that you've earned into real cash. And that's sort of my prediction. I don't know if that's actually the case. We'll find out.
Fact that the odds are stacked against them. But first, let's go back to that question of why it's so hard to make money on the Roblox marketplace, because we're not done. Let's imagine you actually made a game that beats the odds and becomes a small hit, and now your game has thousands of players who are making inexperienced purchases with Robux. Roblox takes a 30% cut of every transaction on their platform, and then you actually get paid the rest in Robux, which of course isn't real money. You can only spend it in Roblox. You want to get paid. You want to withdraw that money as actual cash. Now, here's the bit that I think is just super shady. If any Roblox user wants to take Robux back out of their account and put it in their bank account as actual currency, the minimum withdrawal amount is 100,000 Robux, valued at around $1,000 US. If you make $900 worth of Robux selling stuff you've made, your real life paycheck will be $0. Oh, and also, you can't withdraw anything unless you're first paying for a Roblox monthly premium subscription. Now, let me make this part abundantly clear. This is a choice that Roblox Corporation has made. Entropia Universe, the world's only cash-based MMO that we did a video on last year, has a minimum withdrawal amount of $100 US. In Second Life, it's just $10 US. In making the minimum withdrawal amount so high, Roblox is just increasing the chances that you won't hit that cap, and so we'll just plow the money back into Roblox. Whether that's buying games or cosmetics or saving up to advertise your next game. Lots of Roblox developers even use their Robux to pay other Roblox developers to work on their game. And if they're not smart about how they pay these developers, Roblox will take a cut of that paycheck too. But for now, let's just imagine that you make a game and it's a hit, and you do make it to 100,000 Robux.
Oh, here's the DevX rate.
Finally, to your real-life bank account. You see, Roblox buys Robux from users at a very different rate that it sells them. So withdrawing 100,000 Robux doesn't get you $1,000 US, it gets you $350. Think about it. If your assets in Roblox become substantially devalued only at the moment you take them out of the platform, why not keep them on the platform in case you need them one day? And so tons of Robux don't ever make it off the platform. Instead, they just go round and round with Roblox taking cut after cut. And so while on paper, Roblox developers get that 24.5% of a game's sales, in reality, it's even lower.
Okay, and I'm not entirely sure if this is part of the reason why they do so, but I imagine that they'll have to have some sort of Robux sync, right? Assuming that players can purchase Robux, and they get a monthly stipend of Robux if they're paying for that premium, as they mentioned before. That's creating a lot of Robux. And so somehow they'll have to take it out of the system, otherwise the value of Robux will just keep going down, inflation, that sort of stuff. I'm not entirely sure if it's necessary in this case for the DevX rate to be this low, but it might be part of the economics. We don't really know that.
If we look at Roblox's published records, we can read that for every $1 Roblox earns in bookings, only 17 cents make it back out of the ecosystem to developers. Or at least that's our best guess as to what developers are getting. The platform is actually so opaque that even full-time professional devs who've been doing this for years do not know what fraction of the pie they're taking home.
Like, you just have to roughly estimate it based off of like those exchange rates, and that's all you get.
And by the way, the lack of regulation in today's tech sector is seeing a lot of historically illegal practices coming back again with a new lick of paint. Roblox paying people in Robux is very, very similar to historical mining and logging camps in the United States paying people in company scrip. Scrip was currency invented and manufactured by these companies that could only be used to buy things within the company's camp. For example, in the stores that they would build. The mining camps like paying people in script for the same reasons that Roblox does. One, it means workers spend their money at the company, which makes the company richer. Two, workers become more afraid of breaking company rules because companies can take away their ability to spend script, essentially confiscating their paycheck. And three, script makes it harder for workers to quit their jobs because the moment they do, they get poorer. Unbelievably, these camps would have booths where you could exchange your script for US dollars, but the exchange rate hurt the worker, just like Roblox. Script so messes with workers' ability to make money that it was banned in the United States in 1938. And until we legislate script again in the digital age, Roblox is going to keep paying developers with pretend money.
And this is where I've also heard a lot of the criticism sort of drawing comparisons between Roblox and sort of 18th, 19th century company towns. I'm assuming that they're referencing these coal mining operations where entire families would move into a town which was essentially regulated by the company. They'd work there. They'd spend their paycheck there, whether it's in dollars or in the sort of pretend money that they reference here. And whenever they would go on strike, well, bad things would happen and things like that. So I'm not entirely sure if this is an ample comparison. The way that I see it, and this is thinking about it very much contradictory to what I mentioned before, but in this sense, I feel like Roblox is trying to be, and this is something that Roblox was introduced way back when. And before that, there was also a free currency called Tix, which was eventually discontinued. I'm assuming probably because it was just there was a way to convert the free currency, Tix, into Robux for an exchange rate, which was, I believe, just mostly powered by players. Also, maybe by Roblox. I can't remember now. But they eventually got rid of Tix, and so Robux is just the de facto currency. I'm not entirely sure if this is also part of their business model, and I'm willing to give them the benefit of a doubt that it's just more of the standard sort of game idea of having players convert their money into like diamonds or just premium currency, as you see in a lot of games like, I don't know, Clash of Clans or something like that, you know. I'm not sure if it's really an illegal practice in this sense. And I'm not going to dwell too much on this point, as I mean, I'm not too particularly knowledgeable about US regulations or even other platforms that are doing something like this, because Roblox comparatively is pretty unique. There are only a handful of other platforms, which, again, not very knowledgeable about, that do something very similar to Roblox. And I guess you could argue that Steam and Epic, obviously, they do their transactions in real US dollars. And that could be there could be an argument there that Roblox could implement something similar. And it would definitely hurt their bottom line, don't get me wrong. I think that part is perfectly valid. It would just be a very interesting change for the most part. And I'm not sure how well it would go down, actually, with the player base.
Now, when the question of whether Roblox is treating its designers fairly comes up, and it does come up, you can find long threads on the official forums with older developers banding together to ask or really beg for a more fair profit share, you always see the same two things. You'll see Roblox posting a super corporate and disinterested response that sort of ends the discussion without having it, but you'll also see people saying that devs asking for more money is silly, because Roblox has never been a profitable company. It loses money every single year, and so there's no more money to give out. That is bollocks. But don't take my word for it. Take the word of the market analysts who have decided that as a money-making machine, Roblox is worth somewhere around the value of 7 Ubisofts. The idea.
Okay, but man, I'm going to be playing a lot of devil's advocate in this video. I don't think a lot of companies should be worth what they are worth right now. Like the stock market, I think is just absolutely insane. Full disclaimer, I have money in the stock market, but a lot of these companies are just not worth what they're worth right now in terms of their stock price and their valuation. Like, jeez. And in terms of the increasing the developers exchange rate, um, I know that what Roblox is doing right now in terms of that is doing something called premium payouts, which is basically um, they have a pool of Robux themselves, don't know where they get it from, that they will pay to developers in proportion to the number of premium subscribers that join their game. So the Roblox Premium, the $5 a month minimum sort of subscription thing where you get some Robux every month and things like that. So the proportion of premium players who play your game and stay on your game, so like the playtime essentially, that is calculated every month, and you get Robux from Roblox in proportion to the percentage of premium players that play your game. And my guess is that this is an incentive to get players to get developers to create perks for premium players, and then for the premium players to spend their Robux on those games and attract more premium players so that they can earn money. So Roblox can earn money with the $5 a month subscription to actually make themselves profitable. And from what I've heard from other developers who have first games and also games that are much more successful than my memes, premium payouts have been doing pretty well for them, and in some cases actually amount to more of their earnings every month than their monetized products. So they're like game passes or their developer products, so one-time things or subscriptions, or sort of VIP passes, if you will. So the premium players playing their game actually gives them more Robux. So Roblox is paying them more Robux than they're actually getting from their monetized game. So I think Roblox is trying to go for an argument that the developers exchange rate won't be upped, but the premium payouts, and the premium payouts have been increasing quite a bit. I think they've been tripled recently for some reason that I actually can't remember right now. But I don't know if that's more fair than increasing developer exchange rates. Because on one hand, that means that you incentivize premium players, right? So there's obviously going to be some perks there, which will probably affect gameplay. But on the other hand, you don't necessarily have to monetize as aggressive to get that money, get that Robux flowing, essentially. I'm not sure how much of a good it is to the platform, but that's sort of the direction that I've heard that it's going.
That this company has no more money to give out is a repulsive one. Roblox is just doing the same thing as companies like Spotify, Uber, and Airbnb, something known as platform capitalism. All of these companies have business models based on unsustainable expansion, always moving into more countries, hiring more staff, increasing their expenses until they control the entire market sector and all of its data, and can use this monopoly to make incredible money, as we saw with Facebook and Amazon. If Roblox wasn't losing money year after year, its investors could reasonably turn around and say, why not? And so, when Roblox's developers come cap in hand asking for more revenue, there's never any left, even though the platform has 200 million monthly users and the CEO is a billionaire. Because if Roblox were to give more money to developers, that's less money it could spend growing the platform and becoming a monopoly. We reached out to Roblox Corporation for an interview or comment on how they treat their young developers. They did not reply to us. Let's take a moment to put a human face on all of this. Was it harder than you expected to make Robux with your levels?
That is definitely a big yes.
This is Emil. Emil is 11, and he got his parents to send him to a special summer camp where he could learn to code for Roblox, and then he made a game all by himself. And the game flopped, and he ended up sounding like a disenchanted 30-year-old veteran in an 11-year-old's body.
Even though Roblox says to encourage you to actually make games, the likelihood of you making a successful game is basically zero.
Yep.
You always compete with the people that have lots of money, and like, it'd be a problem if I showed you something because I'm trying to...
No, please. Show me whatever you like.
This is like a big game developer that has lots of success. Like, the amount of people that they have means the bigger the success is.
Yeah, and looking at some of the comments before I actually watched this video, this is very much the case. And this is the case with a lot of businesses. In terms of the bigger you are, the easier it is to have enough success that you break even or make a profit. So larger, more established developers on a platform, like hell, big games, for example, they're a studio on Roblox. They've made the same game, Pet Simulator, Pet Simulator 2, and now more recently Pet Simulator X. They've made the same game 3 times. Admittedly, the second one flopped, but the third one has the exact gameplay style as the first one, and it just exploded on day one. Because they already have the existing audience, they're one of the largest game studios on Roblox. They're not the largest. Comparatively, that would go to Uplift Games or Dreamcraft, formerly, who make Adopt Me. But they have those resources to capitalize on.
And that means that they get a giant spike. And even if the spike lowers, they still go back up, and it's just an infinite cycle of spikes that go up and down, up and down. When you're a small game developer, you'll have that spike, you come all the way down, you stay down.
Were you tempted to spend Robux on advertising your game after you made it?
That I didn't even have Robux, but I wish I did, because then I could advertise it and maybe have a chance.
Emil's disappointment wasn't to do with whether Roblox's revenue split was...
And this is where, for anyone who is actually like trying to figure out like what to do in terms of Roblox and getting their game out there, I think one of the more underrated things to be utilized is, again, influencer marketing. And I think that that might be a better way to actually use any money if you do have it to sort of reach out, because you know that when you reach out to these developers or to these influencers, first of all, they may not require you to actually spend any money. So a lot of the in these cases, you might just have to, I don't know, like add like a special promotion code in your game that gives players like some currency within your game on Roblox in exchange for a video, and that video might have a couple thousand, might have a couple million views, and that's a lot of eyes on your game that you know are seeing your gameplay in front with their content creator with their content creator's face on it. And I think that that is much more useful than just sort of blasting these advertisements. But that's just a personal opinion, and I actually don't have any numbers to back that up. That's just more of a, I think that probably works better than running ads, and doesn't necessarily require any Robux to go along with it sort of take. But again, what this 11-year-old developer is saying is true. When you have that huge spike in numbers, you will lose a lot of players after day one. That's just how games go. But even when a large game loses a lot of its player base after day one or week one, it still has enough players to sort of sustain itself somewhere in the front page, maybe not the first tab of the front page, but it'll still be picked up by Roblox's algorithms, versus a game which spikes up, completely drops, and has no players left. That'll just be ignored by the algorithm, along with like the other million games which have been ignored by the algorithm.
It's fair, he hadn't really thought about that concept. He was just upset that Roblox only shows its users games that have tons of fans. But the thing is, Roblox benefits from giving a very small fraction of its developers almost all of the money. Because those successful devs can then keep updating their popular games, or they can make new games, or they can go full-time and hire people to work for them. They can even become celebrities.
I wanted to make this video to really tell you my story and give you my honest thoughts on the 8th annual Bloxy Awards.
And interestingly, the only concession Roblox has made in recent years to do with giving developers more money gives even more money to the developers who were already making money. Experience-based payouts is a new sliver of Roblox's revenue
premium
that goes to the
payouts,
games that Roblox subscribers play for the longest. This is also Roblox Corporation tacitly encouraging its developers to make games that are addictive rather than fun, but The way that Roblox encourages its users to make games that are manipulative would be a whole
Okay, don't do Arcade Island like that though. I know the developer behind Arcade. I'm assuming this is Arcade Island. It would be um it'd be kind of awkward if this wasn't. Oh no, I see the Arcade Island shirt on the side. Okay, I'm good. I'm good. All right. I've talked to the developer of Arcade Island, and he's a good friend. I think his game is genuinely interesting, and I don't think that it's as aggressively monetized. And I'm sure this is just like footage putting together. I don't think that there's actually any shade, but Arcade Island is, I think, genuinely one of the more fun games on the platform to play. It's not very heavily aggressively monetized like some other games can be.
other video. And
Also, in case you are wondering, most of those aggressively monetized games are under the umbrella of simulators. I'm sure that they'll talk about it in a bit.
I'm going to stay on topic. Here's games professor and labor activist Ty Underwood on why Roblox would be trying to empower its most successful developers and ensure the rest have no power at all.
Comparing it to YouTube, you and I know of many YouTube channels where it's like, oh, well, I'm actually a boss with employees now, and so are all the top Roblox games. You can't organize bosses. Their interests do not align with workers. The workers' power comes from having the ability to stop production, and all bosses everywhere, it is against their interests to stop production.
That does track with my experience. I reached out to one extraordinarily successful Roblox developer for this piece, and they did agree to speak to me on the condition that we didn't reveal their identity, saying, quote, "Despite some fair criticisms, we have a good working relationship with Roblox, and I wouldn't necessarily want to be directly featured or quoted in a video critical of their platform cut." I asked that same anonymous developer what message they'd like to get out to Roblox's young developers. They told me, on Roblox, many young devs crunch and burn out. They're not privy to ongoing dev community discussions about healthy working practices. My advice would be to not overwork. Don't feel pressured to work long days, especially as a young person. And
I wish I had the luxury to do that. But unfortunately, you have to do a lot in order to sort of break through, and even especially when you have that first taste of success on Roblox, you desperately want to keep a hold on to that. And if you don't keep a hold on to that, your game might just fade back into obscurity. So I think this is where a lot of developers, especially those who start feeling some success, sort of put in all of their energy. And yeah, I've seen quite a few developers burn out from that. And I think that's where a lot of that comes from. And unfortunately, that's just a part of the platform. Even with games that are relatively successful, there is a very common practice on Roblox to have bi-weekly, if not even weekly updates, content updates to your game. Now, these updates might not necessarily add anything different. They might not be like proper expansions as much as they are just reskins with updated numbers. And you see that a lot with simulators. And they're sort of my bone to pick with Roblox in terms of the direction that I see a lot of games going in. And admittedly, I probably will make a simulator at some point, because there is a potential for money there. But those games tend to be pretty predatory, and have a pretty bad sort of work-life balance in terms of having constant updates, because your numbers, the numbers in those games in terms of the stats, just keep going up. And so you just have to keep on adding more content. And when you add that new content, you just have to tweak the numbers up. There's no way around it for a lot of developers if they want to stick to a weekly schedule. You have a week to build out the next content update. Sure, the maps are easy to create, but an entire system in a week? That's just not really as feasible to do versus just copy pasting, adding a new zone, increasing the numbers, and, well, watching your numbers for Robux go up.
Your expectations. There are millions of experiences on Roblox and only a handful become top games. Make sure to have fun even if only a few people play your game. There's just one problem with getting those messages out to young game developers. Roblox is a publicly traded company now, which means it has a legal obligation to maximize profits. And kids working too hard with unreasonable expectations isn't bad for the company. And this is the heart of Roblox's success. In convincing its young users that making money on the platform is possible, it gets hundreds of thousands of young people pouring their imagination and spirit into making the next big Roblox success story. And while by my estimation, 99.9% of them flame out and make no money at all, that doesn't affect Roblox's bottom line bit. Here's Genya again talking about his experience in the Roblox official internship program.
For instance, in my class, I was the only person that released a game, and that game was the only game from the whole class that actually did well. And we had like 7,000 people online. And so it's kind of rare for those games to actually work.
But then if some young wonderkind does make the next great thing on Roblox, there is nothing to stop an older team of developers taking the idea, refining it, re-releasing it, and then advertising it. But whether young developers find success on Roblox or not, the platform benefits from young developers training themselves up before they've realized that the odds are stacked against them. And once they've done that, they're that much less likely to walk away.
You can't take your game anywhere else. If I'm on Steam, theoretically, I could move my game to some, Epic or try to make a deal with Apple or something like that.
That is true.
Once,
I mean, the entire thing is that Roblox is built on Lua, and not a lot of places use Lua. And there are some compatibility layer things like third-party libraries. There's one that lets you create Roblox games in TypeScript, for example, but they're just not as common. And also, there's just the pain of setting up a multiplayer game somewhere else where you'd have to handle a lot of other stuff. It's just not viable to move a game off of Roblox. I think even for the most popular developers, it would be a pain to do. Some developers have experimented with it, and but they're not moving their game off. They're just building a side product, which is independent of Roblox. And again, those are sort of more successful developers who are making this jump, and not the developers who are disenfranchised by this whole business model.
Once you're in Roblox, it is impossible to extract your game or your work or even your skills from Roblox because it's such a idiosyncratic system to work with.
And this is so infuriating.
I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with that. Roblox, when as someone who programs or scripts for Roblox games, I think my skills have gone sort of both ways in terms of my external knowledge, in terms of computer science, as my formal education, sort of going into thinking about the way that I set up backend systems for Roblox games. But I've also taken in some sort of things that some practices that I do on Roblox that I have moved over to other projects outside of Roblox. But I do understand the sort of idea that, well, you can't really necessarily use Lua elsewhere because there's not really any other places that use Lua, or the Roblox API for that matter. If you're a 3D modeler, that might be a little bit easier, considering that most 3D assets on Roblox are built in Blender, textured, and then ported onto the platform. And I imagine that would be easier. But again, fair point. It is difficult and financially impossible, essentially, to move an entire game over.
For me, because if Roblox was actually operating with care for its young audience, it could be a great thing for the games industry. Free tools to get kids messing around and making stuff that their friends can come and play, also for free? That's awesome! That anonymous developer who spoke to me told me that they wished Roblox had been around when they were a kid and trying and failing to make games in Flash. But that's not what makes Roblox money. What makes Roblox money is empowering kids to become workers with unreasonable expectations of what they can achieve on this platform in a way that would be illegal if it wasn't happening online. So what can we do about any of this?
The question of whether or not it is possible to do labor organizing with children productively is a really bizarre question with much older young people, young adults, who I'm just only now introducing the idea that your boss may have interests that diverge from your own in some cases, right? And this is mind-blowing. I think the answer in this case is that it should just simply be regulated that Roblox cannot have people sell within their games, right? If their audience is largely children. And that's not usually what I reach for, because top-down regulation doesn't build worker power. But like in this case, it's like they're kids. It's what's going on here. It's a very weird and scary situation.
I'm not sure if this is necessarily the solution that I would reach for, and as an impromptu thing, I can't think of really any good solutions to this. One idea could be bringing up the idea of having Robux essentially eliminated and have transactions done with real money. That could be an idea. Though there is some argument there about sort of friction for transactions happening on the platform and things like that, but that's not that's besides the point. And I see this as a leftist. I am very much in favor of empowering workers, and I think that, and I have said publicly a couple of times that I think that it would be kind of an interesting idea to sort of organize Roblox developers on the platform. But the concerns are very much there that a lot of these bigger developers who would be able to actually make an impact and get Roblox to listen are capital owners. They own the game and they hire people. They are not interested in stopping their operation for the sake of workers. And the idea of organizing kids is, again, a problem of its own. I'm not really sure what the best solution for this moving forward is. And truth be told, I've never really considered sort of how much Roblox, in terms of value, extracts from developers such as myself. And I'm not entirely sold on this idea that it is exclusively exploitative. I don't know, maybe that's Stockholm Syndrome or something, but I think that Roblox is, in terms of my own experience with Roblox, it lies somewhere between not completely exploitative and not entirely generous either. I think it's in a spot where most developers would probably argue that it's fine as it is, at least the ones who are doing well. And the people who aren't doing well, they just don't have as big of a say in Roblox as a platform and how it operates.
And what about Emil, our 11-year-old game developer? What does he think should be done?
Do you think that kids should be encouraged to try and sell things on Roblox?
I think that kids should be encouraged, but they shouldn't be lied to about how easy it is, because it's not easy.
But the one thing we know for sure is that Roblox is not going to legislate itself in a way that affects its ability to make money. Roblox is going to continue doing everything it can to scratch revenue out of its young, vulnerable audience, no matter whether they're getting fair pay, whether it's good for their health, or whether they're fully empowered to walk away. Thank you very much for watching this video.
So I'll list my closing thoughts here. That I think, again, it's hard for me to say whether or not Roblox is necessarily as exploitative as this presenter argues that it is. For me personally, I've had good experiences, relatively speaking, I've had relatively good experiences with the platform, with the people on the platform, including those who are far more successful than I am. And I can't necessarily say that it is a terrible environment to be in. That being said, I do agree that there are some things that Roblox can do to sort of give more value back to its developers. But again, it's a balancing act, and with the idea that Roblox is valued so much at so much, and I've left my arguments there that, well, everything is crazy overvalued right now. And the fact that Roblox is not profitable, I don't know. I just don't know. But what I can say now is that Roblox is not perfect, but I am grateful for what I have. And there are valid criticisms about it. And I wish that they would be, just in general, I think if for nothing else, I hope that they can be more transparent in terms of their business practices, in terms of the percentage that they're giving developers, and the statistics, especially with ads and things like that, sort of the statistics of the return on investment. That stuff you can calculate, but again, their business model is relatively opaque. And if anything, I'd like to see more communication from folks at developer relations or just the company in general about Roblox and the business model and things like that. Even if that means that fundamentally right now that nothing changes. And I mean, I can't think of any good solutions. And for me personally, I'll briefly touch on my own journey through Roblox. So I've been a part of the platform for 9 years, almost 10 years. I joined back in 2011, played for a little bit, tried to make my own games, and ended up quitting because, well, I wasn't really getting anywhere in terms of programming, just in general. Like, I wasn't able to be satisfied with anything that I built at that point. I came back in late 2019, maybe late 2018. I can't remember now. I think it was late 2019. With some friends and just sort of messed around from there. And just recently, for the past 2 years, I've been a little bit more serious about it. And I can't say that there is necessarily anything on Roblox that's preventing me from becoming successful as a worker, not an entrepreneur. That I haven't seen anywhere else. People are looking for experience. People are looking for prior success. And the problem with experience is that, well, they're looking for things that were successful or large in terms of scale, and you can't really do that as a smaller developer. You need to have some way of getting that foot in the door, and this is a problem in tech. This is a problem probably in general in terms of getting a job, but this is also very much a problem with Roblox, where people are just looking for workers who already know what to do and can immediately provide value for their experience. They're not looking, for the most part, for newer people, and the people who are looking for newer developers and newer workers are generally those who are relatively new themselves. And in that case, you are very much making a gamble of whether or not your time and effort will be worth it. A lot of these smaller projects, they don't pay at all. And if they do pay, they don't pay well. So the journey of becoming a full-time Roblox developer is one that is incredibly difficult. And I've tried my best to get there myself, and even with my level of expertise sort of outside the sphere of Roblox, I haven't been able to get that. With really anything. And I believe me, I tried. It's just that there are hurdles along the way to becoming that successful sort of venture beat or business insiders 16-year-old entrepreneur. Like, that is not going to happen for 99.9% of people. But even for the 90% of people who are trying to become at least full-time on the platform, it is still very much a struggle. And if there's anything I leave you with, it's that I think I really appreciate what Roblox has done. And it's been a big part of my life. I mean, I'm 19. I've been on Roblox for 9 years, almost 10. It's been half of my life nearly. And it's done a lot for me on a personal level, and starting from now, it's been doing something for me on a financial level. It hasn't become my life. I still haven't found really any opportunities to go full time myself. But I think the platform is overall not terrible. It's not as exploitative as this presenter argues it is, but it's certainly not the empowering sort of anyone can be successful sort of charade. And I've made a tweet about this. It's not a perfect meritocracy, but it's not an entirely exploitative place either. And I think that the best way to change the platform for the better is to point out these flaws and advocate for those changes. I don't think that either way, fundamentally, my video or this video in general will actually change it. Because the way things are going, the platform is doing all right. I mean, it's losing money, sure, but it's not. The stock value is doing all right, and that's what corporations care about. That's what, well, capitalism is all about, right? You just increase your valuation as high as possible. So I don't think fundamentally anything will change, but my personal hope is that Roblox gets a little bit more transparent about their practices, and that's really all that I can ask for in terms of a educated sort of guess. I mean, and realistic sort of request. I don't think it's realistic to sort of argue for it, and it would be difficult, improbable, if not impossible, to organize labor on Roblox, as much as that would be kind of cool to see. But that's the end of this reaction video. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, my name is MacAndSwiss, the most Asian brony on the internet, and I will see you all next time.